Semper Fi, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of Recon Jack. I'm your host, United States Marine Corps veteran and living historian, Chuck Lynch. On today's episode, I'll conclude the exploits of John Marshall Gamble, the first and only known U.S. Marine to command a U.S. Navy ship, having done so while fighting the British Navy during the War of 1812. In the event that Captain Porter did not return, Gamble was to hold the base for 5.5 months. Porter never returned. Trapped at Valparaiso by 2 British men of war, he was forced to surrender. As the days passed at Nuku-Hiva, Gamble found himself enclosed by an ever-tightening ring of treachery. The natives, realizing that he now had only a handful of marine and sailors, began to steal his provisions. Some of his own men had struck up friendships with native girls, were giving them precious food, and permitting them to swim out to the ships. 4 of the men even deserted with a valuable supply of powder and muskets. By April, it was almost time to leave Nuku-Hiva, and as the day of departure drew near, Gamble's men grew sullener. They loafed at their work, and many times he caught them watching him closely. One 7 May, aboard the Seringapatam, 4 miles out, they gave Gamble and his men 3 old muskets, put them into a leaky boat, and then headed off to sea. In constant danger of being swamped, Gamble and his party managed to row back to the base, and only to find greater trouble awaiting them. The natives, having heard of the mutiny, plundered the Americans' stores. In a fierce skirmish on the beach, they massacred 4 of Gamble's men, including Midshipman Feltus. Driven across the sand to the water's edge, the Americans jumped into a boat, pulling hard for the nearest of the ships, the Sir Andrew Hammond. The Marquesans scrambled into their long pointed canoes and swarmed out into the harbor after them. The Americans reached the ship, but the natives pressed onward. Aboard Sir Andrew Hammond, Gamble ran to the guns, which he always kept loaded. Hobbling from one to the other on his wounded foot, he fired them at the native craft until they scurried back out of range. Gamble's crew consisted now of only 3 sailors and 3 Marines. Quickly, they hoisted the sails and soon were out of the fatal harbor. The Americans had no map, spyglass, or compass, but trade winds carried them for 15 days until they came to the Hawaiian Islands, where they found shelter with friendly natives. There, they heard of a ship seen recently off the islands whose description tallied with that of the Seringapatam. Gamble decided to go after it and bring the mutineers to justice. However, while sailing among the islands in search of provisions, he encountered the British man-of-war HMS Cherub. Defenseless with his small crew, he surrendered and was taken to Valparaiso as a prisoner. Gamble's capture by the British sloop also served to protect the American whaling efforts in the region. Aboard Sir Andrew Hammond, Gamble was carrying gifts to be delivered as a tribute to the King of Leeward Islands. When these were taken by Captain Tucker of the Cherub as prizes of war, the diplomatic relations between the British and the King of the Leeward Islands deteriorated. When American whalers were seen in the harbor, Captain Tucker demanded that native king turn both whalers and the stockpiled whale oil over to him. Tucker went so far as to threaten the king by landing his Royal Marines to change the king's mind. The good king firmly said no. Tucker decided that a sloop's small complement of Marines and available firepower would be insufficient to force the issue, and thus sailed away. Commodore Porter wrote a further communication to the Navy Department. Captain Gamble at all times greatly distinguished himself by his activity in every enterprise engaged in by the force under my command, and in many critical encounters by the natives of Madison Island, rendered essential services, and at all times distinguished himself by his coolness and bravery. I therefore do, with pleasure, recommend him to the department as an officer deserving of his patronage. I now avail myself of the opportunity of assuring you that no Marine officer in the service ever had such strong claims as Captain Gamble, and that none have been placed in such conspicuous and critical situations, and that none could have extricated themselves from them more to their honor. When the war ended, Gamble was released to finally return home, where rapid promotions awaited him. Having already granted a promotion to captain in June 1814, he was promoted to a substantial majority only in July 1834. A full 21 years after his most famous action with the Seriapodum, Gamble was brevetted a lieutenant colonel on 3 March 1827. He held this rank until his death in New York City on 11 September 1836. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Recon Jack, and perhaps you've learned something new. Stay tuned for more episodes as I continue to explore the hallowed history, traditions, and individuals of the United States Marine Corps. Please feel free to like this video, subscribe to my channel, click that notification bell, and leave a comment in the section below. I always enjoy interacting with you folks and seeing the growth of this channel. Also, don't hesitate to tell a friend or family member or send me an email directly to recon_jack@hotmail.com. And until next time, Semper Fi and carry on.